Mr. Sleepy Man takes inspiration from quite a couple games made in the late 90s and early 2000s. Specifically, Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Banjo-Kazooie, as well as The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. But taking inspiration doesn't always mean you're trying to copy something. There's a distinct difference. If, God forbid, you're straight up copying another game or piece of art, that means figuratively, you're tracing over the lines of the source material without room for your own expression, creativity, or ideas. But inspiration can often be more of a cause and effect type of scenario. For example, if someone came up to you on the street and kicked you right in the nuts, you'd be inspired to find where they live and seek vengeance upon your newly gained lack of reproductive function. It's all about context. Just because you're inspired by something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're playing by its rulebook. You can simultaneously love something and be critical of it at the same time. In fact, someone who has adoration for a piece of media may be the most qualified to provide constructive criticism towards it. And these games, they're a staple of my childhood. And Mr. Sleepy Man, the idea of playing in the past, being lost in dreams, these are themes that carry out throughout the story of the game. No spoilers though. You're gonna have to wait to figure out exactly how.
You're the kind of guy that likes to eat cereal off the floor, huh? That's cool. You know, I'm not really one to judge another person's lifestyle of eating cereal off the floor.
So let me tell you how The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask inspired my game, Mr. Sleepy Man. Let's take it back to the year 2000, before anything bad had ever happened in the world. I was just a little kid, not even 5 years old at the time when I first rented Majora's Mask from my local Hollywood Video. It looked so cool and spooky, but when I got home to play it, I couldn't even get past the title screen. All because I didn't have the Nintendo 64 memory expansion pack. So like the little neurodivergent child I was, instead of moving on and playing some other game, I just watched the title screen for hours and imagined what playing the game would be like. Only about 10 years later, I finally got the chance to play Majora's Mask. And to be honest, I was kinda disappointed. The 3-day cycle was more of a stressful mechanic than I envisioned. And I don't know if the time limit complemented traditional gameplay elements you find in Zelda games like dungeons or exploration. But still, the concept of a time loop stayed in my head. And when I first started working on Mr. Sleepy Man, I couldn't help but find my own way of implementing that type of mechanic, particularly in the opening level of the game, Bedtime Town.
That window's pretty much on break. What? Sleepy? You can't just go breaking my window like... Oh, you don't care about anything I'm saying? That's cool. That's cool. You know, I respect that.
In Bedtime Town, time is of the essence. Characters have their own schedules and goals similar to Majora's Mask, but there's a big difference with how the player interacts with the characters. In Zelda, NPCs tend to function purely as walking text boxes, with the majority of background characters only existing to provide a couple lines of dialogue, which for that game is great to broadcast the downward progression of the world, but in Mr. Sleepy Man, my NPCs tend to be more reactionary. Most start off friendly, but if you fuck around, you're sure as hell gonna find out. There's an equal reaction to every action the player takes, and if you do enough damage, the entire town will turn against you and start an angry mob. So since the world exists in such a destructive state, there needs to be a mechanic in place that sets the world back to its baseline. And this is where time comes in. Eventually, time will cause the world to reset, but if and only if the player has already done significant damage in Bedtime Town, or to themselves. That means this mechanic won't mess with other parts of the game. The exploration, side quests, and platforming objectives are all able to be completed at the player's will. I want the best of both worlds. This time loop mechanic should be fun without limiting the player's current goals. And the idea that your destruction is creating a nightmare for Mr. Moon Mayor over here, I think it's the perfect execution. But the thing is, I feel like I've only just scratched the surface with these mechanics. It's so easy for me to look out into the horizon and envision how far I can go with the systems I've already put in place. But alas, I can't keep Mr. Sleepy Man in the oven forever. There's only so many characters and levels I can add into the game before my brain explodes. I gotta wrap this thing up. But what do you guys think? I have pages and pages of my own ideas, but what do you think would be a fun interaction for Mr. Sleepy Man to find himself in Bedtime Town? If you like my videos and you can't wait to play Mr. Sleepy Man, wishlist the game on Steam. It's the best way to support little old Mr. Sleepy Man here.
Looks like you're not really good at video games. You know, maybe you should call your dad and ask him to beat the level for you. Are you sure your controller's plugged in?